if any of you have heard of a scholar by the name of Dr. Malachi Z. York from the Nawapian Nation. He has been my spiritual guide and master teacher for about 20 years. And he's always taught us that, number one, our power lies within us. If we make spiritual connection to our ancestors, if we link back to what our ancestors did and practiced, if we link back into our cultural practices, that is where our power as Black people comes from. And he also made it clear, and he's also taught us and shown us where other great men of the past and great teachers of the past have made it so abundantly clear that we have to, as Black people, be able to trust ourselves as opposed to giving our power away to other cultures and other institutions that were created for other cultures. We can't expect to put ourselves in those institutions and still get the same benefits as the people that created those institutions. So when my husband and I realized we were having a baby, you know, my mum sent me to a private school for my secondary education. So and when I left the secondary education private school, I went to a state college, and there was such a vast difference between the paid for education and the free education. And because education has been something that was very important to me, and again, as Black people, we know we were the original scholars. We had the first libraries. We were the original scientists, geographers, doctors, surgeons, everything. I wanted to make sure that my children were educated to the highest degree. So when we first had our first child, the plan was to put them into a private Montessori school.
Right.
But we had our first child, and then very soon afterwards, we had another child. He unfortunately passed on because he was born prematurely. And then we had another child, and the school fees in my mind started totting up. So by the time we got to 3 children, I'm like, you lot ain't going private school. We're going to stay home and work this out. So at that point, my husband and I were already self-employed. So we realized that we had the unique opportunity of being able to craft our lives around both of us being able to be self-employed and work from home, and us being able to home educate our children at the same time. So we made that decision that we would fully home educate the children and both run our own businesses, which would give us the flexibility to live anywhere, move as much as we wanted to, and have more control over what it is that our children were learning. Because we also were very clear about the fact that there is institutional racism in the school, and there is. Yeah, and it would be like, I'm a big mouth. I don't mind starting an argument with people. I'm the type of mum that would just be on the phone like, oh my gosh, it's Mrs. Salmon again. Someone else come and take the call. I took the call yesterday. I would be that mum. Do you know what I mean? Like, the teachers would look at my children like, oh, Mrs. Salmon's children. I would be that mum, because I'd be calling up like, why are you teaching about Christopher Columbus? Why are you feeding my children foolishness? What's all of this about only having 15 minutes of this? Where's all the Black people in the curriculum? I would have been that mum. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just stay home and work this thing out. It can't be that difficult. Literally, that was my thinking. Can't be that difficult. It's home educating, innit? They're only little. They need to learn how to read, write, spell. So that's all it is.
So on the back of that, you saying it can't be that difficult. How have you found it?
It's been a bit difficult still. Here's the thing. So we've got 6 children now, and what we found is that I'm basically learning what I need to know for their next step. Like, I don't need to become a professor in science. I don't need to know degree level anything. My daughter's 15. I just need to know one step ahead of her, or get resources together for the next step of her education. And there are so many online resources that are available from Khan Academy, YouTube, IXL. I mean, right now, if you're a parent, you've probably had the WhatsApp message where they've given you all of the online learning sites that your children can learn from. And they've always been there. Like I said, I've been doing this for nearly 12 years now. Those resources have always been there. And believe it or not, in my years of home educating, there are more white home educating families than there are black home educating families. So the schools that were made for white people don't even trust them. They're taking their children out quicker than we are. So there's always been big home educating communities in this country, and there's always been companies that have created home educating resources. So even though I've got 6 children, what I did with the oldest, I could just replicate that for the younger ones and then just adjust it to their needs, to their learning styles. And I feel that having my children at home, even though it's challenging, I feel it's easier than putting them in school, because if I feel personally, and this is just personally, there's no judgment on anyone that's putting their child in school, but I feel that I would feel more worried with my child being in school and not knowing what they're learning. I would be more worried than having them at home and having the other fear, which is, am I teaching them enough? Am I doing enough for them? Because to be honest, parents have that concern anyway. All parents, they're home educated or not, they're like, am I doing enough? Am I feeding them enough? Am I stimulating them enough? Are they having too much screen time? So whether my child was in school or not, I know I would have the same concerns. But as far as their education is concerned, I am more comfortable being the main person that facilitates what it is that they're going to learn.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Greetings, sis.
Greetings. So I've said for a while, I haven't got any children living at the moment, but I've said for the past 5 years that I would like to homeschool. I'm definitely going to homeschool my children. I know it's going to be a challenge. What would your kind of 3 main things or 5 main things or however many main things would you say to someone that's think he's gonna think about going into homeschooling their children? Or the don'ts, if you like.
I mean, I think there's a bit of a difference if you're taking your child out of school and home educating them from, changing that dynamic for them, rather than you having a baby that you've never put into school and you're going to home educate them that way. If you are taking your child out of school, the advice that I would give parents is to talk to your children, because unfortunately what can happen in the school system is that children are not encouraged to think, they're encouraged to follow instructions.
That's right.
Goes, do this. A teacher comes in the room, stand up. We tell you to do some homework, you do some homework. We tell you this is the answer to the question, even though you don't think it is, just put the answer we've told you. And so when children get the freedom of home educating, depending on how the parent wants to facilitate home educating, you as a parent can decide what it is your child is going to learn. Because when you home educate, you're under no obligation to follow the national curriculum. What they're learning in school, you have no obligation to teach that at home. So if you spend a whole month just teaching your child geography, you have the freedom to do that. If you just want to focus on maths 2 days a week, you have the freedom to do that. If you want to just focus on storytelling for 3 months, you have the freedom to do that. So when you've taken your child, if you're home educating by taking your child out of school, the first thing you can do is have a conversation with your child. Ask your child, what do you like doing? What are you passionate about? What do you find enjoyable? What are you struggling with? What would you like to do when you grow up? What would you like to do next year? Is there a hobby that you would like to work on? And then you can build a curriculum for your child or pull together learning resources for your child based on what they love.
Yeah.
If you're home educating from just your child growing up from being a baby moving forward, you can literally just move at your child's pace. Because again, if your child's not in school, they don't have to do 7-year-old work because they're 7.
That's right.
They don't have to do 12-year-old work because they're 12. Like my daughter started her reading from a GCSE science book when she was 10 because she loved GCSEs. She loved science, sorry. So I just gave her the book because that was the only book I had. So I was like, might as well read the next one, innit? And she's been with that book for the last 2 years. And she may not sit her science GCSEs right now, but she doesn't. There's nothing in her head like, oh, this is work that's for someone older than me. This is me in it because I like this. This is me. So as your child is growing, whether they're 2 or 3 or 4, and some parents won't even introduce any academic work to their children until their children are about 4 or 5, because children learn a lot through playing, through example, through doing things with their hands, problem solving, copying you. So you have so much freedom when you are just doing it from when they're young. Now, the only responsibility, and some parents do not slack on this, but some parents don't always understand the reality of the situation, which is that as a parent, by law, we are still required to make sure our children are receiving a full-time education based on their age and ability. Now, what full-time looks like is up to you, but you can't have your child do nothing at all for long periods of time. However, there is something called unschooling. Now, unschooling is where you as a parent don't set any work for your child. You just encourage your child to learn and explore their environment and learn that way. So even though you're not setting maths tests and spelling tests and putting them in front of this video and asking them questions for it, you still have to create an educational environment so every day your child is learning. And you can, in some way, if someone was to come in and have concerns, not that anyone really has the right to do this, but you need to be at least able to say to yourself, okay, I know that today my child learned this. I know that they're developing this skill. I know that they've spent a full-time amount of time learning and educating themselves today. But what they learn is entirely up to them if you're an unschooling parent. And if you're just a general homeschooler, you can decide to replicate school at home. You can have a desk, you can give your child a uniform, you can have a little bell, you can go to town, or you can have it in a more relaxed way. You do have the freedom, but you do need to make sure your child is receiving a full-time education for their age and ability.
And being consistent with it as well, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a question, which is the question that I had. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's coming. It looks like it's coming through in the chat. Someone's asking, do you think the number of children makes a difference? And my curiosity was, how do you go about socializing? Because obviously I find that, or there are a lot of children, even when you speak to some children that are older and have been homeschooled, navigating just, life outside could be a bit challenging. So how do you go about that?
I mean, what I will say is that I went to nursery, I went to primary school, secondary school, I went to college, 2 colleges in fact, and I always found it challenging socializing until I got to college. Like my home educated children, some of them are far more social than I ever was, and I went through the whole school system. So as far as like home educating and being social is concerned, it's not always like socializing. It's fine if you're in school, and it's a problem if you're home educating, or it's something you need to be more mindful of if you're home educating. Because a lot of people do find that home educated children, some of them do tend to find it easier to socialize than children who have been in school, because it's very individual. It very much depends on the child as to whether socialization is something that you really need to take into consideration. However, I do definitely feel that if I only had one child, I would have to make a much bigger effort to make sure that they had opportunities to socialize and to learn how to socialize.
Right.
I have 6 children though, so my children always have at least 5 other children. Even they could fall out with half of their siblings, they still got 2 other children that they can hang out with. And my husband and I both work from home primarily, so they have us to interact with as well. And having said all that, there's 8 people in this house, and there are still some of my children who do find it more challenging to socialize when we go outside. And then we have other children of ours who are social butterflies.
Yeah,
right.
They can socialize with anyone. They don't have any challenges. So I don't think home educating is necessarily the determining factor as to whether socializing is a challenge. I think looking at your child as an individual.
Okay, thank you.
We got another question. Are you working off a curriculum?
So I did look at the national curriculum, even though I've always known that as a home educating parent, I don't have to follow the national curriculum. I did look at it and I was baffled. Sisters, I was baffled. It was like I was reading Chinese. I was like,
right,
home educator, I don't understand this. national curriculum. But a lot of home educating parents have told me they looked at the national curriculum and they were like, this don't even make sense. It doesn't make sense. So what I do is I will normally start the children, like if they're 3, and that's when we kind of get them into reading and writing, I will start them on a 3-year-old book or a 4-year-old maths book, or find work for 3 or 4-year-olds. And then from that point, I will just keep up with them at their own pace. So by 7, if they're doing work for a 9-year-old, then that's what I will get them to do. If at 7, they still need to do 5-year-old work, I'll do that. If at 12, they're doing 16-year-old work, I'll do that. So for each child, I kind of just move at their own pace and then create a curriculum for them individually, as opposed to following any set curriculums. The only set curriculum that I have is one called Jolly Phonics, which is one that teaches blending and reading and writing. So I bought the teacher kit for that, and that's what I normally start the children on. But again, how quickly they progress through that is kind of dependent on them. I have bought some curriculums in the past, but it's not something that I've heavily invested in or stuck to, because the other consideration with certain curriculums is they can be a little bit rigid, like you have to move at a certain pace through them. And I know for a fact, and most of us probably have experienced this, that if children get bored by something, or they don't find it entertaining or interactive enough, or it just doesn't suit their learning style, it's going to be a challenge to get them through it. So yeah, because of that, I do tend to just make my own curriculums based on each child, so that I don't spend a load of money on a curriculum and it just doesn't work for them.
Are you going to make your child do the GCSEs?
Okay, so with GCSEs, I wanted my children to do GCSEs, not because I think it's going to be a determining factor as to whether they're going to be successful in life, but because I wanted them to experience beginning and ending a project like GCSEs. That's why I wanted them to do it. Now, some of my children, the career path that they want to follow, they're going to need probably everything up until a PhD. Because one of my daughters wants to get into robotics. So she's probably going to have to do GCSEs, A-levels, get a degree, and then get a PhD. That's going to be probably best for her. But one of my daughters is already an author, published a book, is on her 2nd book, and what she wants to do long term, we can't see how a GCSEs is gonna hinder her. It's almost not really going to be necessary for her growth. Now, if she decides she wants to do it and pursue it, that's fine. And as far as maths is concerned, we had this discussion the other day. As far as maths is concerned, it would just create a logical ending to her having set maths lessons if we had it in our mind that by the time you finish your GCSEs, you're done with maths. If you want to pursue it, you can, but there's no obligation to afterwards. So just for kind of forward planning, it's just a nice logical ending to my obligation to teach her maths is for her to pass the GCSE in maths. But it really does depend on what the children want to do moving forward long term. So one of our children at one point was really into cooking. So for her, it would have made more sense for us to put her through culinary school than it would have to use time up getting her to go through GCSEs and A-levels when it wasn't really going to be necessary for her life moving forward. So that's the way we kind of see GCSEs. So at this stage, I know for a fact that one of our children is definitely going to do maths, and one of the children is going to do all of the GCSEs, and then the rest of the children we're going to kind of see whether they need it as we move ahead.
Thank you. That's perfect. How have you found it financially, homeschooling? I know a lot of homeschooling parents that I spoke to, sometimes it can be financially challenging, and because you have to buy everything from home. So how have you found that?
Well, as a home educator, you can go broke. You can spend silly amount, like obscene amounts of money on home educating supplies, or you can do it all for free. Because I mean, and there's been times when we've had to have a very minimal budget on what we spend on a monthly basis. And I swear to goodness, like, I hope my husband ain't watching this, but I swear to goodness, there was a time I spent close to £600 in a month. Don't ask me where that money went, but I know when I was looking back, I'm like, backside, how did I spend £600 in 1 month? What?
Yeah.
What did I buy? Gold tip big pens or something? Like organic writing paper. What were you doing, Leah? I was literally like, Leah, what did you do, fam? You don't even. I didn't even know I had 600. You know, one of them ones. I didn't know I had £600 to spend, but I know I spent £600 in 1 month. So, because we need to buy everything, that's why I really feel like conversating with your children and having that discussion with your children about what they really want is helpful. Because as a parent, you know, again, all parents, home educating or not, all parents want to do the best for their children. And companies know this, and they will play on your emotions with their marketing. Like, don't let your child miss out on the opportunity of becoming fluent in many languages. Buy this language program. Maths is critical to your child's success. Buy this maths program. Like, it's so easy to just buy all these resources. And then you realize, in fact, my child knows half of this resource. My child's not into that resource. My child has absolutely no interest in this other thing. I don't even know why I bought this classical art blinking textbook. Like, it's really important, I feel, to just have that conversation so that you know, okay, my child's into football and Fortnite. So that's what we're going to put on our money. My child's into making money and Minecraft. All right, that's all I'm spending money on this. I'm going to find as many free resources as I can, as many YouTube videos, Khan Academy videos, free trials for things. I'm going to find as many of those things as I possibly can. Free principles, go to pound shops. Like, the last time I counted, we have about 700 books in our house, school reading books, children's books. And I would say at least 500 of them are from charity shops. They're either donations or charity shops, or, you know, when you go to the library and they're like 7 books for 20p, that's where at least 500 of the books that we've got. It's either gifts, donations, pound shop, or library. With full price, we barely buy full price books. So it can be as expensive as you want it to be, or you can do it very frugally.
Okay. We've got another question here. Do homeschoolers do better than their public school peers on standardized tests? They've just said they don't have any kids, but they're just asking.
So there have been some very, very kind of general research that's been done into this. And it's mainly anecdotal. But what's been found is that a lot of home educating parents have found that they have put their children in standardized testing, and their children have performed in many cases just as well as children who have gone through the whole formal school system. But then you have other children who perform, you know, really poorly when it comes to standardized testing from home educating, because they're just not used to that structure of sit down, be quiet, don't say anything for an hour and a half and just answer these questions, because they never had that experience, any kind of exam experience at home. I remember when I used to go to, there was a home education fair that I used to go to, and there was a lady selling books, and I was like, oh, are you a home educator? And she said, yeah, I probably read all of the books on my table, because anytime I had concerns about home educating, I'd find another home educating book and read it. And I was like, oh, well, how's your journey been so far? She's like, oh, you know, it's been fine. I've got a son, he's about 15 and he's doing well. I said, oh, 15, did he do GCSEs, or are you planning for him to do GCSEs? This is what she said to me. She said, when it comes to maths, we studied for about a year. He worked really hard. He found it kind of challenging. We put him through the GCSE and he got a C. I said, all right, cool. And then she said, with English, he picked up an English GCSE textbook. He read it on his own for 3 months. She put him through the GCSE and the boy got a B.
Oh, nice.
I said, I beg you don't tell my mum that, because my mum paid for me to go through private school and I didn't go no B in my English GCSE. Don't tell my mum.
Amazing.
Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's quite varied
to the child, yeah.
How the child is going to perform in standardized testing when it comes to GCSEs. However, again, because home educators have the benefit of being one teacher to one child or 2 children or 3 children or 4, if you decide as a parent you're going to put your child through GCSEs, that's all you need to focus on. It's not like a child being in school and they've got to go to like 16 classes through the week. If you know you're putting your child through GCSEs, you have the freedom to just let your child focus on studying for their GCSEs until it comes time for their testing. You can get tutors if you need to. You can access all the online resources. So I think that does, in some ways, give children a bit of an advantage when they are home educated and they are going to go and sit their GCSEs. But again, some children are just going to flunk because that GCSE structure was never really for them.
Yeah, anyway, yeah.
I have a question. I have another question again. So when it comes to Black history, if that is something that you go into with your children, where do you get those resources from, and how do you make sure that they're factual, or that they're factual?
So basically, I haven't taught, the only history that we teach our children is Black history. We haven't actually started them on any other type of history yet. In the same way, when I wanted to start doing music with my children, the first thing I did is I went and bought African music instruments. I found African music videos on YouTube. I found out about African artists, music artists, and that was the children's music lesson. It was teaching them everything about African music. And then I taught them about jazz and found all the Black jazz artists and showed them all the Black jazz music. And then we did reggae. And I found all the, Peter Hunningale and Pete Tosh and Burning Spear, Kalanji, and that was their music lesson. It was learning about our stuff first, and that's something I've always been really clear about. When it came to their education, they were going to learn about Black stuff first. They were going to learn about their stuff first, and then they could learn about other people's cultures secondarily. And to a degree, I don't even feel like it's necessarily my job to be the one that does that for them. If they want to learn about English history when they're older, they have the freedom to, because for most of us, it was the other way around. For most of us, we got taught Caucasian history, and then we had to go and decide, I want to go and learn about Black history, and then they would go and find out about Black history. We would have to find out about it on our own. So I wanted to make sure it was the other way around. Now, as far as whether the Black history was accurate or not, I basically just try and find as many experts that I can whose information seems as credible as possible, and I use that. And what tends to happen is most stories do kind of match up. When you are looking at, you'll hear one expert refer to another expert, and both of their stories are quite aligned. We learn a lot about Egypt as well, because we, from all of the and the thing is, I do look at white scientists and white archaeologists and things on the History Channel and the Discovery Channel, but I also make sure that what is on from those sources matches up with a Black expert. So Ben Yoknan, again, I'm a Nawapian, so Dr. Malachi York has got hundreds of books on Black history and Egypt. Marcus Garvey's story, Malcolm X, Frances Cress Welsing and her information, Anthony Browder. All that kind of information is the stuff that our children will read and learn about. So they learn about Native Americans, they learn about the Aztecs.
Nice.
We teach them about it one day and a year later they forgot, so we got to go back to it. So we also have, because I live up in Wolverhampton, there's a Black Saturday school that we take our children to, so they learn about Black history there. We take them to Kwanzaa events so they can, learn about that, Kwanzaa and why Kwanzaa was created. And so we kind of do our best to just make sure the information that they receive is as accurate as possible. But again, I've always been taught to not believe anything and check things out as much as possible. So that's really what we do. And we encourage the children to do that as well. Like if we're teaching you something and it doesn't sound right or it doesn't seem to make sense, please feel free to ask us as many questions as possible, because I might be chatting friff and you might be the one that points that out to me, young child. And I would appreciate that. So we can both learn together. And there are a lot of things with my children that we do learn together. Like I will find a video, make sure it doesn't have any bad language in it, and we will sit down and we will both we will all look at it for the first time and we will all discuss it. So we're learning together. So it's not as much of a, I'm a teacher up here and you're the child down here. It's we are learning as a family. Now, don't get me wrong, my children know I'm the boss, yeah. But as far as learning is concerned, it's, you know, there are some aspects of it that are quite dynamic. Like my children all learned how to play chess when I was too scared to learn chess. I'm like, I ain't learning that. That's going to baffle me. I ain't doing all of that. The board just looks confusing. I'm not doing it. My son was beating me at chess for like years, literally years. My son is the reigning champion in our house when it comes to chess. And then we found the original chess game, which was an Egyptian game called Sonnet. And the children have just started learning that now. And again, I'm on the back foot. Everyone else knows how to play it and I'm not that good at it. But yeah, that's how we kind of introduce as much Black history as possible and how we aim to verify our sources. I hope that answered your question, sis, because I went a bit sideways with that.
No. You brought it full circle. Thank you so much. It really helped.
Thank you.
It helps as well. Sorry, sis.
I was going to say, I love how you said that, you know, when you're teaching that it's very interactive and that they may challenge you. I feel like that's one thing with school that they're taught not to challenge, and children grow up thinking that there's something wrong with challenging something, and that's human nature. We're supposed to challenge things. So I do love that about homeschooling, that it instills in their children that it's okay to challenge. Yeah,
similar to what you're saying, Josiah. Yeah, I think there's a Eurocentric way of them teaching us at school, and it's very obedient, and they teach us to be obedient as opposed to be free thinkers and scholars, and that's what you're doing. You're teaching your children to be active kind of thinkers, like as opposed to just being a follower. And I love that. I absolutely love it. And you saying about Francis J. Quisling and then Anthony Browder, and they're the ones that I love. These are the people that are not only psychologists, but they know about African psychology. And you know, Anthony does trips to Egypt every other year, or in fact every once a year, to be fair. And there's others as well. There's Ashra Kwesi. There's so many others. Naeem Akbar, Wade Noble, so many others. Linda J. Myers, who are of that knowledge when it comes to Black history and why we think the way we think, and empowering Black people. It's lovely. It's a beautiful thing.
Note, ladies, I know you've mentioned a few names there. If you have a look, you can see live comments. Pin some of those names in the comments. So if there's anyone else who wants to check out those people, that they can.
I was just about to ask that, or possibly even in the WhatsApp group, if all the ladies are in there, because that would be great for me, so that I could. I don't know any of these names that you all mentioned, so I would love to go and check them out further. Yeah.
I'll put some names in. I'll be happy to put some names in. Absolutely.
Thank you.
What, ladies?
Sorry, young Cal, go ahead.
So can I just add? I think the blessing of having the actual opportunity to homeschool kids is that you can not only have them sitting at home, but you can teach them. They can do hands-on learning. They can get out, because I know in the way the school do it, you have to sit. Everything's in order. You have to sit and learn, and not every child can learn that way. Some kids they need to do something to learn, because that's
especially boys. Boys don't do well sitting down.
Yeah, and so I think that is the benefit of homeschooling, that you can, you know, use so many methods to teaching a child, because every child is different, and I think that a lot of the Black kids are so misunderstood. And actually our kids are very smart, because I have a son and he goes to high school, and they tried it with me. They tried and told me, oh, you know, your son's not doing very well. I was like, you know what? I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you what, you know. And when I taught him myself how to do phonics and how to read, they were shocked at the progress that he had come from the bottom to the top. They weren't helping him. They weren't. And I took my time out, and I went back and forth, left and right, and they were amazed that he came on top so rapidly and so quickly that they couldn't believe it was the same person.
Well,
even in high school,
definitely.
Even in high school, like he's doing really well, but he's doing exceptionally well now. And I mean, I do believe that the school isn't enough, because my husband's father's a teacher. He's a scientist teacher, and he's been tutoring with him like every weekend, and his grades have gone up so much higher now since he's been tutored by his granddad. So I guess it's just different methods and different techniques, and
the schools are racist.
Teaching these kids.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with your son. Your son is teachable.
Yeah.
The schools have a problem. You see, this is what I don't like about the schools. They look at our black sons and daughters like they're the issue. They don't reflect about them and their teaching style, and how actually these teachers are taught to dumb us down, and they're taught to be stereotypical with us and horrible with us. And that school, I'm so glad listening to your story. I'm like, yes, there's nothing wrong with your son. The schools are terrible. Sorry.
I was going to say as well that I do think that sometimes we forget as parents, and especially mothers, that it's instilled in us to be teachers. Like, that's our innate nature to be teachers. So when we're allowing the school system to take away from what we were built to do, you know, it's not the natural order of things. So I really appreciate you for coming on here, because it's one of my battles. I've got 4 children.
Congratulations!
Thank you. My son's 11, and since my daughter was born, she's now 6. I've been going back and forth. Should I homeschool? Should I not? And I was really worried. And my friend Gemma, like, we're always talking about it. Should I homeschool? And being in this position now with quarantine, it's pushed me to be like, you know what, you can do it. So yeah, I think speaking to you beautiful ladies today with quarantine, I feel like it'll be definitely something that actually.
I say,
I think also, it is a great opportunity, because the way they have built up the school is that everything is Caucasian, and so you have pictures of White Mary, Jesus, or whatever,
Shakespeare,
whatever school, and it's implanted in their head that this is their authority, and this is, you know, they are above them, and so they've already had that imprint in their mind that these people are superior to them. I've seen it for myself. So I think that it's definitely a good to have homeschooling, because then you can really influence and get into their psyche about, you know, who they really are. And it's just so deep that even your eyesight can influence you as a person, and you know, influence just the way you see yourself, and seeing people that are of your color, seeing like you know, you're taking your kids and teaching them history and everything like that. It's embedded in them that they are great, because they've seen black people like themselves that have done amazing things. And it's sad. It saddens me to know that we were the teachers, we were the Moors. We went out there and we taught every part of, well, the Europeans. We taught the Europeans, and they've taken it for themselves, and then now they're teaching us. And it's just like, we got to claim it back. We've got to show them that actually you got it from us. Do you know what I'm saying? And so even with like, sorry to digress, but even with like foods, like things like turmeric. My mum's been telling me about turmeric from I was in my teens. I'm like, Mum, what are you talking about? And now I'm seeing everyone else talking about how great turmeric is. I'm like, man, we really need to listen to our people. We really need to value what our people are saying. We are the head. We started everything with the universities. So we got to get our kids, like you said, out. And boy, all 3 of my kids go to school. They go to government school. My son goes to a good school, but boy, I just don't know if I'm built for it.
Based on what you lot are saying, there's 2 things I wanted to mention. One thing is attention, and the second thing is institution. Now, firstly, the reason why your son got better grades after you intervened was because he got attention. And that is one of the key things that is missing in schools. And it's not always because the teachers are involved. Oftentimes teachers are actually under really challenging situations, and I've always had this sympathy for teachers, because there are some brilliant teachers out there. There are some teachers who really love children. They really want to bring the best out of children. They're not racist. They're very inclusive. They're passionate about what they do. but the institution they work in ties their hands. You have to spend this much time on filling out paperwork. If a child bangs their arm on a door, you have to fill in a whole report. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to set this much time for homework. You have to set this much time for reading. You have to set this much time for this, that, and the other. And it's like, yeah, but I don't then get to spend any time with my children. Well, you just have to do it. And what normally happens in schools is, like, parliamentary ministers all the way up there set decrees, and then those decrees have to be actioned by the headmaster or the Board of Education. They pass it on to the local authorities. The local authorities are like, okay, we need to get this to the headmaster, the headmistresses. Then the headmistresses, they pass it down to the teachers. And the teachers are like, what do you want me to do with this? This is a load of instructions. None of this is teaching. This is all bureaucracy. Stuff you have to do to get more funding. Stats is all about funding. Stats is all about making schools look good and funding. It's not about really finding out the level that the students are at. It's almost unfair, the amount of work that children have to go through and the pressure that children get put under to pass stats when they're not really helping the children at all. It's all bureaucracy. No. So you get teachers that enter into the profession with all the best intentions, and then a year later, the teacher is hardened. The teacher just wants to get through the day. The teachers just wants to get through the day and get paid, because they know that trying to change the institution is like banging their head against a brick wall. So I don't actually blame schools and teachers for the situation that happens in a lot of schools, because I know they're put under really challenging situations. And and that also trickles down to attention. So the reason why your child starts doing better when he was being tutored, when you were spending time with him, because you were able to give him the one-to-one attention. His grandfather was able to give him the one-to-one attention that the teacher can't possibly be able to do in a classroom full of 30 children. They just don't have the time and the resources to be able to do it. And you know, when they do those experiments where they see how energy affects different things, so they will get 3 glasses of water and they will say wonderful positive things to 1 glass of water every day, and then there's another glass of water that they completely ignore, and then there's another glass of water that they say horrible things to every single day, and they do this every day for a month. And what they notice is the glass of water that they're saying all the positive things to, that glass of water looks clean, it looks relatively fresh considering it's been sitting there for a month. The glass of water where horrible things are said to it looks manky, there's moss growing in there, it looks unclear, and it looks dirty, as you would expect. But what's interesting is the glass of water that gets completely ignored looks just as bad as the glass of water that horrible things have been said into. Because as children crave attention, children crave connection. And what oftentimes, again, happens is, and again, not always through fault of the teachers. So we know some teachers are racist and they're doing this intentionally. But sometimes just because of the sheer workload, not all children get the attention they need so that their greatness can be brought out of them, which is why schools that have smaller class sizes, no matter what the spread of the children in that class, whether they're all black or all white, the children tend to do better. When there are more teaching assistants in a classroom, the children tend to do better. When your child is outstanding and they warrant the attention, more of the attention of the teachers, because they're going to make the school look better, they tend to do even better because they're being exceptional. And then all of the rest of the children who aren't getting as much attention, either because they're not amazing or they're not misbehaving, they just have to glide on by. And that's why a lot of our children and children in general will end up misbehaving, because they know they weren't getting any attention when they were, behaving and doing their work well and gliding by. As soon as they're naughty, all of a sudden they're hearing their name called constantly. They get to leave the classroom because they've been told to leave. They're finally getting attention. And when a child knows that I can either get attention by being brilliant or being bad, and I'm getting more by being bad because these teachers think I'm bad anyway, so they've already branded me as the bad child because I'm the darker child, or the black,
or whatever it is,
Or whatever.
I completely agree with what you're saying, Leah. But I also argue that these problems have been happening for years and years and years and years. When I was at school, when my mum's at school, why is there systematically no change? There's probably been a little bit of an increase in teaching assistants in schools, but why is it still systematically the same consistent problems happening after 30 years?
There's a school to prison pipeline, and they have to fill the prisons. The school to prison pipeline it's been documented. They know that it's true. They know that there is a journey that
correlation
will go through from being in school, following a particular path, and ending up in prison. And prisons are businesses. So that's why there's unprecedented numbers of young people going into prisons. Like a few years ago, men on the streets, he specifically said that they are building multi-prisons, like multi-capacity prisons, and they know they're going to be able to fill them. They know for a fact. And there's a sister called Cheryl Phoenix Henry, and she's done extensive work into the school to prison pipeline for Black boys. And she's got a whole organization called the Black Child Agenda, where she literally goes into conferences with teachers, and she's saying to the teachers,
I know
this is a list of 20 things that happen in schools that are racist. And she says that the teachers are looking at her like, really? Is that racist? Oh, I didn't know that. I do that all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that was offensive. There's no
they don't even know themselves
to them for changing what they've been doing to our parents, to us. Sisters, there's no incentive. That's why we have to take back control of our children's own education. Because the thing is, the Education Act of 1986 stipulates that your child's education, as a parent, you are responsible for your child's education, whether you decide to send them to school full time or otherwise. And the otherwise is you keep them home and home educate them. So even if your child is in school, that doesn't mean that their education is still not your responsibility. And what parents can sometimes fall into the habit of doing is, unless there's a problem, I'm going to focus on making sure I can make money and keep the roof over my head and feed us all, and try and pursue my own interests to a degree. Is my child fed? Are they attending school? Are they getting in trouble? Okay, I'm doing my job fine. And that's perfectly understandable. There's no judgment in that. But the unfortunate reality is, just like with our health, until there's a problem, we don't always kick in. Now, there are some parents who understand the problem is that the child is in an institutionally racist school anyway, so they always have to be vigilant, and they always need to be making sure that they're asking their child, how was your day, making sure their child's done their homework, looking at the work that their child is going to be presented with before they get presented with it. Because as a parent, you can see what you can access or ask, what's my child going to be learning about next term? What is they going to be learning about in this subject and that? And you can help them with that before there are any problems. And that's really where the attention is. And those children do tend to do better where the parent is acting in a more kind of preventative capacity, rather than, okay, there's a problem, the school's calling me, why aren't you doing this, why aren't you doing that, or having to defend their child to the school. No, my child isn't doing this, my child isn't doing that, when unfortunately in a lot of cases the parent just wasn't able to or didn't feel it was necessary to step in until there was a challenge. And again, the system's been set up like that. The system's been set up to keep our nose to the grind so that we're constantly working, and we put enough trust in the school and the school system to do the majority of the work for us. And it's so, listen, when I send my child to the youth center, like to the youth club down the road, I stop thinking about my child the moment I get in the car. I'm not thinking about what are they doing in there. It's a break. I'm like, thank goodness, 2 hours of freedom. And if they were there for longer, if they were somewhere where I felt they were somewhat safe, I would clock off as well. And some parents do, for a variety of reasons, kind of fully hand over the reins to the school. And that's where problems will set in. And in that situation, the school can have so much control over your child's mind that you will never know about it, because your child only, adults in general, we only have about a 7-minute memory. So if I was to ask what we were talking about 14 minutes ago, we wouldn't all definitely know, but it's all gone into our subconscious. So parents are dealing with challenges that their children are exhibiting based on things that child has absorbed, snide remarks, underlying racist comments, sexist comments, comments that are pushing certain gender objectives, religious objectives. All these things are going into your child's subconscious, and then your child ends up with challenges, behavioral challenges, and as a parent, you don't even know where they're coming from. Yeah. The teachers don't know where they're coming from, and it all just gets blamed on this is just a bad child, when it was simply because the child didn't have enough attention directed to them for them to be able to flourish and grow.
Yeah. I've been loving this conversation on homeschooling. So we still get time. Let's move on to your work in food and health, Leah, and how as women, as mothers, as men, how we can be more healthier and be more subconscious of what we're putting into our bodies.
Okay, so one of the things that I have always said is that I don't necessarily have any titles as far as I'm vegan or raw vegan or pescatarian or anything like that. My focus has always been on eating whole foods. So as I do have one of my books is a raw food recipe book, because I do love raw food. But that doesn't mean I'm necessarily a raw vegan or a vegan, or I promote any particular type of diet to any individual. So my main focus when it comes to working with sisters is to encourage them to eat as much whole, natural, unprocessed food as possible. Because what can sometimes happen is we will, when it comes to getting healthy, just to make it easier, we will adopt a particular title. I'm a vegan, I'm gluten-free, I'm organic. And if you are gluten-free, then you're like, okay, this gluten-free thing is healthy, so I'm just going to go and buy all gluten-free food. But just because a food is gluten-free, it doesn't mean that it's sugar-free. It doesn't mean it's dairy-free. It doesn't mean it's organic. It doesn't mean it's natural at all. It can be highly, highly processed, but it's gluten-free. And the same thing with veganism. Some people want to become plant-based or vegan, but beer, whiskey, cigarettes, white flour, sugar are all vegan. They're all vegan and they're all plant-based because all alcohol comes from plants. So I think that's one thing that has become very popular in the Black community, is to be plant-based, is to be vegan. And a lot of sisters are therefore adopting this vegan lifestyle, and they're removing all the animal products from their life, especially dairy. And dairy is definitely one thing I would recommend all sisters do remove from their diets. But in its place, it can be easy to just over-consume over-processed grains and then meat substitutes and things like soya. And in my experience, I feel soya is probably one of the most damaging foods that we can consume. And the reason I started my work as a healthcare professional in the first place is when I was about 11 years old. I went to go on a school trip when in primary school, and we went to like a farm. And so I was on this farm for a week playing with the animals and the goats and, being around all these animals. And then when I came back, my mum took me to the butcher's, which we would go to every single weekend. She took me to the butcher's to go and buy meat. And I'm now looking at a chicken skinned and feathered and dead and hanging above me. And I was like, right, I was paying one. So at that point, I told my mum I wanted to become vegetarian. And my mum was very accommodating. So she said to me, okay, if you're going to be vegetarian, and everyone said this to me, in fact, you're a growing girl and you need to get your protein. So everyone recommended I had soya. So I was having soya like 3 times a day: soya milk, soya cheese, soya burgers, soya bacon, soya bread. I slept on a soya bed. I wore soya clothes, drank soya water, drank soya friends. Soya I had so much.
Oh my God.
Like my breakfast in the morning, me and my best friend would meet up first thing in the morning. I would go to the health food shop and get soya milk and a flapjack. And she would get a Mars bar and a Coca-Cola. And we would both have this first thing in the morning, every morning. It was our little thing. And at this point, I don't know whose breakfast was more unhealthy: her Coca-Cola and Mars bar, or my flapjack, which was processed oats, 4 types of sugar, dairy butter, and preservatives, and my soya milk. I don't know which one was more unhealthy. But needless to say, I developed health problems. So when I was 17, I developed a condition called metrorrhagia. And it was basically where you bleed between your periods. So I had a period And then 2 weeks later, I'd bleed again. And then 2 weeks later, I'd have my period. And then 2 weeks later, I'd bleed again. And the in-between bleed could have been anything from some dark brown discharge to a full-on bleed for 3 days with clots. Now, initially, I thought I was being like punished. It was a punishment from God. Maybe I wasn't doing my homework right. Maybe I was staying out too late. You know them ones. I thought my room would fall out. Thought it was one of them ones. And I was a 17-year-old girl, so I wasn't about to start talking to adults and strangers about my period. So I literally lived with the condition for 2 years. And as the saying goes, in order for change to occur, the pain of staying the same has to become greater than the pain of change. And it got to the point where I could not continue because I was just getting so scared for my own health. So I finally went to go and see a doctor, and I was actually a medical secretary in a hospital at the time, and I worked in the GUM clinic, the sexual health clinic. So I actually asked one of the doctors who I was friends with if she could just see me kind of off the books. And after bearing my soul to her for the first, like she was the first person I told about this after 2 years, she basically said, well, if it gets any worse, come back in 6 months.
Whoa.
Worse. And the reason why I had doctors in the first place is because I was scared that they would either operate on me or drug me or ignore me. And to be honest, I think I would have preferred them at least show me some consideration, offered me some drugs, and it show you care. Not
that attention you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, like attention. Like, give me some attention. Offer to cut me up. Do something. Offer me something so I can say no. Don't give me nothing.
6 months.
Exactly. I did initially feel abandoned by the medical institution, but what that actually did, it did provide the catalyst for me to take my health into my own hands. So I was already learning about nutrition and herbs and aromatherapy. So I started studying more about those things regarding womb health. And then I put together a herbal combination for myself. I started using aromatherapy oils and made dietary changes. And within 2 weeks, the symptoms have subsided. And within 3 months, the condition had completely gone. So that that turned me into, like, I would say a health freak. Like, you know, those really annoying people that have just found out about health and they start.
That was you.
Like, considering that. Is that gluten-free? Is that vegan? How many animals died to put that on your plate? Like, I became one of those people.
That's hilarious.
Honestly, I became one of those people, but it also made me realize that I was really passionate about making sure that people didn't have to experience what I experienced, which is going to the doctors, expecting the doctors to provide care and support and listen to you and believe you, and then just be abandoned by them. And a lot of the sisters that I work with have said to me, I've gone to the doctors and told them what's going on with me. They've run tests. The tests come back negative and they tell me I'm okay. And I know I'm not okay. And I'm like, sis, I know you're not okay as well. But you're going in, it's like with the school, you're going into an institution that is set up in a particular way. And in many cases, the doctor's hands are kind of tied. They don't have that many options other than to medicate you, ask you to come back in 6 months, or operate on you. And if you're not in all of those kind of things, you do need to go to the natural route. And soya consumption was one of the main things that was contributing to my womb health challenges. So using the experience that I had in regenerating my health and working with other people as well, and then learning about children's health through the health of all of my children as I was, you know, being a mother and being pregnant. And because I had my first pregnancy, my child was premature. She was born at 7.5 months. And that was shocking because she was my first child. I was relatively healthy. I didn't think those kind of things would happen to me. She was born at 7.5 months. She stayed in hospital for 6 weeks, and then she came home. Now, by the time she came home, I was already pregnant with our second child. And that, now, in my mind, I was like, yeah, the same thing ain't going to happen again. I'm fine. It was just a one-off. I'll be fine. And then I went into labor at 5.5 months. So our second child was born at 5.5 months. So he lived in hospital until he was 8 months old, and then he passed on because his body just wasn't ready to be outside. Now, a lot of babies born at 23 weeks, they do survive, but my son was just not one of them. So as a mother and as a woman, what that really did is it dented my confidence in my body's ability to be able to hold children. So that had a lot of psychological and emotional and mental impact on me. Thankfully, when we did get pregnant again, very shortly afterwards, me and my husband have got a lot of attraction for each other. We're both Scorpios, do you know what I mean? Didn't take long before another baby was there. Thankfully, I pulled myself together enough to realize that, again, I healed myself previously from my previous condition, and I do have the power to do it again. So what I decided was that I was going to have a home birth with as little medical intervention as possible. So I didn't even go to the doctors to tell them I was pregnant until I was over 5.5 months pregnant, so that they couldn't say to me, you might go into labor at 5.5 months like you did with your last child. By the time I got to the hospital, I was already 6 months pregnant, and they were flapping around like, oh my gosh, why didn't you come in sooner? You've had premature births, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, it's all right, just chill out. Everything's going to be fine. I'm just not going to come in that much. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to look after myself, and I'm going to have a home birth. And originally they were like, yo, I don't think that's a good idea. You've had 2 premature births. It's probably going to be the case that you're going to have a cesarean section. And I said, I understand your concern, but if I go full term, I'm having a home birth. And to cut a long story short, our 3rd child was born on her due date at home in an uncomplicated 3-hour labor. And all of our other children, all other 4 children we had after that, were all uncomplicated full-term home births. Now, I will put a caveat out there. I'm not saying that as a pregnant mother, you should not go and see your healthcare provider. That has to be your decision. I'm not advocating you don't go and get medical help. I'm just saying, after my experience, the first 2 pregnancies, I decided that that was what was best for me. And I'm obviously, I had some health training and as a nutritionist, so I was maybe in a better position than other parents. However, women, I share these stories just to let you know that our bodies do have an amazing capacity for healing. So any health challenges that you're experiencing now, whether it's that you've had premature babies, you've got fibroids, you've got other womb health challenges, you've got skin challenges, your hair's not growing, your body has an amazing capacity to heal itself. Because both of my healing journeys both involved me turning to rest, herbs, aromatherapy oils, and whole foods. And as Black women, those 4 things alone can have such amazing impacts on our health before we ever need to consider pharmaceutical drugs or surgery.
Right. So I agree. I have 2. My question is somewhat twofold because it kind of touches back on the education, but is also here within this discussion. Now, for someone that's looking to get into the profession, as like I'm in school and I'm looking to get into education and therapy, which therapy is somewhat medical. Someone looking to get into the profession, but after having these discussions, we understand the challenges that are happening within the medical system. We understand the challenges that are happening within the education system, but obviously you want to contribute positively to, to the people that you serve. What would be your advice on that? Do you think that it's a good idea to go into the system? Can you have any effect within the system? Or would you say that it's probably a better idea to look at having your own practice and doing your own thing and serving people privately? What would you advise?
So I actually do feel, regardless of everything I said, I do feel we need as many doctors, as many nurses, as many midwives, as many headmasters, as many teachers, teaching assistants, blinking janitors, PE teachers. We need as many Black people of consciousness in and around our children in these institutions and with our people that are going into hospitals as much as we possibly can, because we can create, because there are a lot of doctors who are right now with the COVID situation, there are a lot of doctors who are coming out and saying what they can see from the front line. And if you do have doctors in there who are more conscious, you've got doctors in there who do have more care for their people, they are tipping the balance on all the other health professionals that are just seeing our people coming in there as, people, just bodies, not even people, bodies. So I do feel that if you've decided that you want to be the one that makes the change, go in there and be the one that makes the change. Because like before there were planes, someone had to be the one that said, I'm going to put some wood together and a bit of metal and a bit of string, and I'm going to fly it across some water and no one's going to die. Someone had to be the first one to say that. And the laws of nature would have made anyone think, but that's crazy. You're not going to be able to have that impact. But someone decided that they were going to do it, and they were passionate enough to pursue that until they were able to do it. And in the school system, you do have some schools and some teachers who have the wherewithal and the passion and the dedication to navigate the obstacles in order to affect change. And it's creating brilliant results, because there's a school in Croydon last year, they were all over the news or social media, because all of the children in that school got A's in their GCSEs, and they were all Black and Asian children. And it was a black teacher, and I think a Black headmaster that was in that school as well. So success can happen. So I really do feel we do need to institute it. But as a person, you need to decide, am I going to be the one that goes down that route, or am I going to be the one that creates the natural holistic alternative that people will come to, as opposed to being the change on the ground level? But whatever you decide to do, go for it. Whatever you decide to do.
Blessings.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes, exactly what I said before, we don't listen to what's inside of us. Like, we're natural healers, we're natural teachers. Like, I fully agree with you. Like, my eldest daughter, I didn't have her at home, but I had a water birth with her in like a birthing center. And out of my 4 children, that was by far the best experience I ever had. And I always tell mothers who haven't had children yet, they're like, what do you do when you go into labor or when you're pregnant? Listen to your body. I'll tell you everything. Listen to your body. There's nothing to be worried about. There's nothing to be scared about. You're built for this. Listen to your body. So, and like how you said, in my 3rd child, I wanted to have a home birth, but I was having a lot of complications. And sometimes I just wish, you wish that if you just listen to your intuition, just listen to your body, listen to yourself. But I didn't. And I went into hospital. Ended up being induced. And then when I was induced, when she was born, she had health complications, which she still has now. And in my mind, I'm like, I feel like it's because she was induced why she has those health issues, or it's because I wasn't eating properly why she has those health issues. So I really think as women, as a mothers, that we just really need to listen to our intuition and listen to our bodies. So, we have a question down here. It says, we could force the agenda at the moment because life is fluid and the relationship agenda became something so quick. How can we make others see that it's important to learn about us other than clothes, music, dance, and sport? So how can we make others see that it's important to know about I
don't actually think it's our job to convince grown people what's important to them. I do really think that like, it's difficult enough to teach, to force information on a child, much less a grown adult. What seems to be happening more, and again, great teachers have spoken about this. Our teacher, Dr. Malachi Z. York, has spoken about this, is that a lot of great spiritual minds have spoken about the fact that there is a shift in the consciousness right now, and people are just naturally waking up and being drawn to information that's going to help break them out of the condition that they're currently in. Because what's going to happen is, and what is happening right now, and I'm sure all of you sisters have recognized this, if you mention 5G, if you mention the coronavirus not being the full, not being everything they're talking about on the news as it is, like, it's not the full story we're getting. If you mention any of those things, you'll be branded a conspiracy theorist. If you try and share that stuff on certain social medias, you will have your stuff taken down. People will say, oh, that's some roadman science. Like, roadmen are the most unintelligent people in the world. And that's another thing that's really annoying. In fact, I was speaking to my husband about this. What's been happening recently, if someone wants to discredit some information, they'll say, oh, did you hear that from a roadman? Like, black men have been, if you're a black man and you're on the street, or you're a black boy on the street, you're all of a sudden completely unintelligent. When we know that black boys are, when they're, again, like we said, given the attention that they need, they're some of the most intelligent people, enterprising, entrepreneurial, innovative, brave group of people we know are these roadmen that you keep on talking about. And the thing is, people are also saying stuff like, oh, you didn't pay any attention in school for science, and now you're a scientist when it comes to viruses and all this kind of stuff. And you're talking about herbs and taking vitamin C. What do you know about all of that stuff when you didn't even bother to, you know, complete your education at school? Like, I feel like right now, what's happening with people waking up to things is what should have always happened in our education system, which is that information is relevant to us. The reason why people that, you know, roadmen or our young boys or our young girls or people that didn't have an interest in this stuff in school are now interested in their health and science and viruses and immunology and herbal medicine and shungite and crystals and herbs is because it's interesting to them, because it's applicable to them. Most of the information we're taught at school, children are like, what's the relevance of mountain science to me? I live in a state in Balham. Why do I need to learn about ocean technology?
Yeah.
None of this has got any relevance to me. Why am I learning about Shakespeare and 1066 and the Battle of Hastings? None of this is important to me. I don't care about any of this. It's not applicable to me in my life. But right now, what's happening is people are taking education into their own hands, using the internet to learn about things that are benefiting their life. And I think it's a beautiful thing that I'm seeing 24-year-old black boys talking about, yeah, I'm going to take CMOS because it's going to clear all the mucus. That's a beautiful thing. It shouldn't be seen as something negative. And that right there is an example of why we don't need to force anything on anyone. People are slowly waking up, and the internet, Black Ice TV, sisters like yourselves, taking the time out to share this information and promote your talks and promote your events. You lot are opening the doors and putting the information out there so that the hungry minds of the people are finally going to get fed unprocessed food. You lot giving them the whole food.
The whole food. Yes, sis.
And the green banana and the yam.
Hey!
We've been having pot noodles and blinking McDonald's and fried chicken. We've been having all of that foolishness, and now we're finally getting the proper information, because again, we were originally the scholars. We were originally the scientists. This is nothing new to us. It's just reawakening the stuff that's always been inside us. It's reactivating that DNA that we've always had, and we can see it in our youth, we can see it in our people around our age, we can even see it in our elders. A lot of our elders are moving away from things that they held onto, and they are embracing things like, you know, CBD oil and not always wanting to go to the doctors, and me not trust them, me not take all of them drugs, them assure them try to kill me. Even our elders are moving away from it. So I don't think it's ever been our job to force anything on anyone. I think we just need to continue doing what we're doing, which is openly and unapologetically sharing very important information as widely and as far as we possibly can.
Facts. There was a question previously and about the education part, but even again in what we're talking about now, someone asked about, you mentioned the link between how the education system works to be able to send people to prison, which again, I'll bring it back to what we're talking about now. Is probably the same thing with the way that food is being, you know, advertised and promoted onto us. And they were saying, I believe the question was asking, how do we let children and others know about these agendas that are happening and kind of try to intervene and stop that from coming to reality?
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please, sis?
Sure. There was someone that asked, I think it was on YouTube, that made a comment that was asking, that was saying, commented on the fact that you mentioned the agenda for the schools to
school to prison pipeline.
Exactly, the school to prison pipeline. And I'm saying that also, I think that some of the information that we're receiving about the food that we should be eating and the advertisements and all of that is giving us incorrect information in order to make us sick, right? So that we can start to feed, you know, financially the medical system. I believe the question was, how do we intervene in that process? How do we let especially educate children to know about these processes?
Yeah. So what they say with the food, a lot of nutritionists like myself, we say things like 80% of what you eat is to keep your doctors and your gyms in business, and only 20% of what we're eating is to actually keep us healthy. And I feel that like the education system, because if we think about why the education system came about in the first place, in ancient Egypt, we always had schools. Children at 12 years old were learning information that PhD students are struggling with now when they're like 25. So education was always a thing in our ancient cultures. But like a few hundred years ago, schools didn't necessarily exist in the same way that they do now. There wasn't like mass schooling. What happened with the Industrial Revolution was that now all of these factories were erected, and the factories needed factory workers. So parents now had jobs. So if the parents had to go into work, children had to go somewhere. So that's why bigger schools were created, because before it was only the rich that had schools. It was only rich children that were taught, and they were taught in small classrooms and nice buildings. But when all of the working class now had to go to work, and the working class children needed somewhere to go, they created the school system. And that's where a majority of the children went. Now they had to decide, what are we going to teach these children in these schools? Well, we're going to need workers. When these people grow up, when these little children grow up, we're going to need another stream of workers to fill the rest of the factories. So the education that was provided in school was mainly to create workers. That's the point of the school system. So again, with the schooling, 80% of what you're learning in school is teaching you how to be an obedient employee.
Yeah,
that's right.
20% is really for your own benefit, which is why a lot of people my age remember going to their careers advisors when it came to the end of their schooling. And careers advisors would almost always suggest that Black children would become hairdressers or barbers or footballers, or, you know, something that didn't use our intellect as much, because it was like, we just need to increase the workforce as much as possible. Now, the school to prison pipeline is not something I'm an expert on. It's definitely something that Cheryl is an expert on. It's one of them ones where when she told me it made perfect sense, but I'm not going to try and relay it to you because I'll butcher it. And then everyone will be like, she don't know what she's talking about. It's not real. But, I would recommend you please do some research into the school to prison pipeline, Cheryl Phoenix Henry, the Black Child Agenda, because she'll be able to explain it a lot better than I can. But basically the statistics of Black boys who don't get good grades in school, who end up in what's it called? Pupil referral units in schools, where they basically get suspended or expelled, or they get put into rooms in schools where they're considered naughty children. And then children who end up then either falling completely out of education and then falling into a life of crime and then ending up in prisons is crazy. The statistics for that are crazy. Something like, so even though we only make up 3% or between 3 and 7% of the population, we make up 50% of the prison system. It's that kind of crazy disproportion that we're dealing with. And even there are certain boroughs in London who have identified that Black boys they've always had a problem with being able to give Black boys the education that they really need. And they know that it's their fault that Black boys are not achieving the way that they should be achieving, but they don't know what to do about it. And like the sisters were saying before, they don't know what to do about it because more time, instead of employing some of the very skilled and trained Black men in the community who are working with young people already, they will get John Butcher from Cheshire, has no experience with Black boys, and get him to come in and be the headmaster of a school in Tottenham with 80% Black boys and expect him to be able to do the job with it.
Totally round.
The contract through the government when they pitched for, we need someone to come in and take over the schools. They just won the contract. And they normally win the contract because they're friends of friends, as opposed to, no, we understand Black boys, we understand their psychology, we understand they need a holistic approach. We're not going to just treat them like animals. They are Black boys, we are Black men, we do relate to their challenges, and we're going to be able to bring the most out of them. They're not the ones that are getting the money, the funding, the grants to be able to do the brilliant work that they're doing. And our boys, and what's also been found is that when young boys access projects that are run by organizations like Manhood Academy and P2P, there's a brother called Twilight Bay who's doing amazing work in and around London. There are so many brothers who are doing brilliant work, and they don't get the funding, but organizations that are just friendly with the government, they get the money, and then they don't do anything. They literally get hundreds of thousands to work with gangs, gang members, and they don't know what they can do it.
And they don't do it.
They don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
Someone wrote a question. Is it right to Black educate them when they are part of the UK?
Goddamn right. Yes.
British way. However, we can learn Black British history. There's a lot of Black British history out there.
Yeah, Black heroes.
In fact, there's a book.
What's so wrong with learning Black history? What's so wrong with it?
No,
why
you know
is it a problem when we're talking about?
There is a Stockholm syndrome. We do have to appreciate that some people do have Stockholm syndrome, which is having that love of your oppressor and not wanting to not want to bite the hand that feeds you. And even though you know you've been oppressed by a certain group of people, that group of people are still at the top of the institution, and you don't want to go and be seen as a troublemaker. So people are like, well, why do we need to be all Black? Why do we need to focus on Black? I'm like, you know what? The world is so whitewashed. Even if every single learning resource I teach my child has all got Black faces on it, the moment they leave this house, turn on the internet, turn on the TV, they're going to be whitewashed anyway. They're going to be whitewashed anyway. So even if I entirely blackwash their curriculum, it's not going to outdo all of the exposure they have to all the white culture that's out there. But what I am doing is what they've always done and never apologized for, which is teach their culture first. They've always taught us white culture first, and then we've had to go and find Black culture. So I don't understand why there's a problem when I need to do the opposite. And it's not making my children racist, because my children have got white friends. My children don't go to white people and start being
it's about identity. It's about identity. It's about identity.
Yeah.
It's identity.
Yeah.
Being pro-Black doesn't mean that anti-white.
If you feel uncomfortable having too much Black stuff with your children, then don't. That's entirely your choice. But as a parent, I've decided that this is something that's important for me to do for my children, because we know representation is important. There's even been statistics that have shown that a child who's in a class and their teacher looks the same as them, those children excel, and there's no other reason for them excelling other than them having a teacher that's of the same race as them.
Right.
We know representation matters. There's so much research to show how much representation matters. And I'm technically a school teacher. So it's brilliant that my children are seeing a school teacher that looks like them. Yeah. And if I choose to give them a Black education, that's entirely my choice, because my children's education is my responsibility, and your children's education is your responsibility. And if you can make the choices that you want to make, it's entirely up to you.
I can see there's a new person here. Hello.
It's Tracy.
Hey.
Hi. Sorry. I just want to add to what you were saying about, should we, teach our kids Black history? I think, it's so important that we do, because they will remind you that what you are, because you're not going to be included in everything. You're not going to have all the benefits that some white kids do anyway.
That's right.
So you'd always be segregated at some point. So it is important to know who you are. It is important to know why you're not, why you haven't got to bring in with certain benefits. Right. So,
and it doesn't mean that you're anti anything else.
Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not saying that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Goodness me.
Tracy, that's on. We can't hear her. We can't hear you.
You need to put your audio. Is it the audio?
Yeah.
You've got to put your audio on, maybe. If you look at your audio down below, I think that's what it could be.
Next to it.
No. We'll have to come back to Tracy then when she gets that sorted.
At the bottom it says
Is
audio
Tracy in the
video.
sister circle? I'm not sure. Not sure. Does anyone know who Tracy is? No? Okay.
No.
God bless Tracy.
We will get to figure it out. She did say she has unmuted herself, but it might be the Wi-Fi that why we can't hear her. Sorry about that, Tracy. If you maybe send in a question, we can answer it there if we can't get to hear you. It's been a brilliant conversation. Thank you. Thank you for the beautiful sisters for coming on. We're nearly coming to the
You gotta love them.
You better be quiet. I'm on a phone call. Come over there.
We're nearly coming to the end, so if we can get your social media handles from the beautiful women that are here. If we start with yourself, Leah, where we can find you. I have been on your website and I've seen that there's some great tips from there on schooling whilst you're in isolation, foods to eat. So if you tell us about that, Leah.
Thank you. So my website is thenaturallyyoucoach.com. So like the sister said, I have a blog and a podcast, and because I was well, I am a nutritionist and I do live blood analysis. I did have a physical clinic, but due to the lockdown, that's been closed. So we're going to be reopening again in June. But until then, I actually go live 3 times a week on my Instagram and my Facebook page. So you can find me on Instagram at The Naturally You Coach, or you can just put in Leah Salmon. And then on Facebook, it's Leah, The Naturally You Coach as well. So you can find me there. And I go live on Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. And then on Fridays at 1 o'clock as well. And I've literally just launched a program called the Black Mama Circle, which is a 9-week online program specifically dedicated to Black mothers of African, Caribbean or similar descent. And you can find out about that at the naturallyyoucoach.com/Black Mama Circle or blackmamacircle.com.
Nice.
Yeah. Is that you as in YOU or you as in this just the letter U?
It's YOU, sis.
YOU.
Thank you.
Sorry, I am putting them in the comments. So if anybody just want to check it out, I've put Leah's website in the comments. I'll tag her Instagram page also in the comments as well.
Thank you, sis.
No problem. Kima?
Yeah. So so my Instagram, if anyone's interested, is it's spelled K for kilo, E for echo, A for alpha, M for Mike, Z for Zulu, and T.
So say that again for us one more time.
So it's K E A M Z for Zulu and then T for Tango. So it's Keem. So my name's Nikema, and it's a little play on my name. So it's KEAMZT, and that's the Instagram. I do a podcast with a good friend of mine who is a clinical psychologist doing a PhD and a psychotherapist, and it's called Sweet, as in the taste, Sweet Talks 777. So you can have a look at Instagram, Sweet Talks 777, and it's open, so you can go into there. You can look on our our YouTube page. We're literally our podcast is about talking about mental health in the Black community. It's basically what it's about. So it's covering Black men accessing mental health. It's talking about supporting people with depression. If you're the person supporting, we're talking about stigmas, self-esteem. We're going in a little bit. And we are still doing it as well, but it's going to be on like a platform like this. every month at the moment, but we've got a few out there. So please comment if you want. We want feedback as to what topics people like ourselves want to hear us talk about. So we'd love to hear from you guys. There's no obligation either. If you just want to listen, that's cool too. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Toya?
Well, yes, as I said, so my Instagram is official, so OFFICIAL, Toy, T for Tango, OI. And as I said, I am still on my journey and I'm building, but my vision and my goal is to really, in music therapy and music education, to really work with artists, people who are pursuing careers in music, and to help them with their mental health and talking about and dealing with those issues that as artists that are not specifically about, you know, singing an image, but how is your mental health? How is your family life? How is your financial life? Really equipping artists on the come up who are going through those challenges and really trying to make a career in music. So that is what I am working on. That is my life's passion. And I'm grateful to be here with you sisters, because I see that, you know, connecting with you can really help to get me to where I'm going, you know, building on these conversations. So yeah, you know, yourself even dealing with mental health, I would love to build with you after this conversation. Yourself also in
with you.
Yes.
Yes.
And Sister Leah also in education and just nutrition. Like, these are all things that artists really take for granted. You know, going on tours and vocal health and all of these things, we take it for granted. Performing is not easy, and we beat our bodies up and we beat our minds up. And at the end of the day, there are so many stories where artists just fall apart. They go through so much depression. They're broken. They go broke because we're only focused on what we're presenting to the audience and not what we're doing to ourselves in the process. So that's what I am working on. And, you know, creator willing, that's going to be my career for the rest of my life.
It's already happened. Metaphysics. It's already happened. You already got it.
Ashe.
Official Toy, is it?
Yes. Thank you.
Perfect. I'll put that in there. Young Cal?
I'm excited.
Okay, so I have 2 Instagram pages. I'm actually working on a website because I think it's time now that I just collect every information that I have. You know, I do a lot of fashion, makeup, but mainly hair. And so I have one that I use for like just helping mothers with daughters and sons, highly textured hair. So I give a lot of advice. So my Instagram page is called Yonkel the Hairstylist. So it's YONKEL the Hairstylist. And I've got a few posts up there. But I also post things about why our hair dries so quickly, or why our hair is so stubborn. Why doesn't the hair get moisturized? So I'm breaking down a lot of things in there, and I'm going to be adding a lot more stuff. But I've also put a question up on my Insta stories asking, have you guys got any questions? So if you go into that page, you can ask me a question about natural hair and you know, for yourself or for your daughters or for your sons even. So I'm here to answer those questions. So yeah, so it's Yonka the Hairstylist, and that's where I just mainly do my hair stuff and just show hair ideas and hairstyles that I can do. But I'm gonna try to, because of the quarantine, I want to be a bit more of a support to guide parents, because now we're closed. People don't have a clue what they're doing with their kids' hair. And so I just want to sort of spend more time with just guiding people and breaking things down and showing them what they can do or how to, or where they can get the products from. So that's what I'm doing now. My other Instagram is Yonkel C, Yonkel with the letter C. And it's just me just ranting, posing, do you know what I mean? Doing my hair and just foolishness, just girly stuff. So that's where I'm at. But yeah, I'm just the natural hair community. That is my corner.
Where are you based, real quickly?
My location is Harrow,
London South.
And
lovely.
Yeah, west, near Northwest, Middlesex. That is where I am living. I have joined a new hair salon, and it's called the Curl Bar London.
Oh.
And it's in Hornsey.
Leah, sorry to quickly point in. Leah, me and you are quite local. I'm Tipton, so I'm not far from you.
Yay! Oh, that's nice. Yeah, man.
We're gonna connect. We're gonna connect with all of you.
I'm in Warsaw as well.
Yes, of course, Joshie. I'm
Wow.
definitely gonna connect with you.
Oh, that's
I'll be flying over as soon as the quarantine's over.
Come over.
I'll tell you,
Listen.
Since 2018, between 2018 and 2019, I was out there 3 times. So it's my mission. I'm making regular trips over there because I have some friends over there that I'm working with in music and things like that. So I'm really looking to build a community out there. So I'm looking forward to meeting you sisters as soon as this quarantine is over. My ticket is booked.
You can come stay with me. You can come stay with me.
Sis, thank you.
Ashe, absolutely.
Just to end it then, again, I'm Jaisha, one of the host facilitators of International Sister Circle, behind organizing the events and everything that you see going on there. So I've put our Instagram page and our website there, so you can go check us out. We will be here every single Sunday with a new topic, some more knowledge, some more information. So please, everyone, tune in. We're here to spread love and bring sisters together, bring families together, most importantly as well. So I really want to thank you, beautiful women, for coming on. Tracy, even though we couldn't hear you, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your questions and your input. Gemma, who was with us, also, she's part of International Sister Circle as well. Our events, she's back there.
And thank you, Joshie. You're really, really part of the facilitating and
thank you, sis.
Thank you. Oh, there's Gemma. Thank you as well to you, Gemma.
So,
Absolutely.
we'll see everybody again next week, Sunday. Can't wait to see you or see everyone again. And don't forget, in 15 minutes time, we've got Queen Diambi right here on Black Eyes TV. So tune in. Thank you for everyone in the comments that signed on to hear us talk about homeschooling and health. So thank you again.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you, ladies.
Thank you, Tori Riggs.
Thank
you. Bye.
Peace.